Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I am so excited to have my guest on today. Her name is Sunny Lawrence, and she is the wife of James Lawrence, otherwise known as the Iron Cowboy. They have been married since 2000, and they have 4 daughters and 1 son. She is James's number 1 supporter through his accomplishments, as well as being an athlete herself all her life. And so today she's going to share with us a little bit of her experiences supporting James and also on her own journey as a mom of 5 kids and all the things that she's got going on. And so I am so excited to have her here because I think we can learn a whole lot from her. So thank you so much, Sunny, for being here. And I'm wondering if you can share with our audience just a little bit about yourself, your journey, and why you're where you're at.
Hey, I was born and raised here in Utah. I spent time outside of Utah, of course, and I come from a large family. I'm 7 of 8 kids, so all I've ever known is chaos and dynamic personalities all smushed into one space. And I loved sports growing up. Now people are obsessed with them. I wasn't obsessed with them like that, but I love them. I played sports while growing up. I've always loved fitness. And James and I met at UVU going to college, and the only thing really we had in common was fitness and sports. So it was, it's been an interesting relationship from the very beginning because we were so very different. And over time, he ended up working his way into endurance sports and into the Ironman distance triathlon. And now it holds world records and is well known. And I guess he's important stuff out there today.
He has a website, right?
He has a website. He's important. Right. And a check mark on Instagram, right?
Because I've heard there you go. There you go. That's what it is.
He earned it. He didn't buy it. He earned it.
Oh, that's the best kind, right? So how did you guys even meet? You were at college and you did sports together. Was it just a chance meeting?
Yeah, I picked up a block class. We had a psychology 10-10 class together, and a block class is one that starts halfway through the semester. So I had been out in Hawaii with some of my siblings for several weeks and had planned on moving there and changed my mind and came back, but it was too late to register, but I could sign up for this block class. So I took this one class. It was just 6 weeks, and that was the class he was in. And, I don't know why we were drawn together. I don't know how. I mean, we talked and whatever, the story of meeting's funny, but we ended up together, and we're kind of an odd pair, but we make quite a great team.
Okay, so define an odd pair. What does that mean?
I'm a kind of an intense personality. I'm a total extrovert. I love people. I love connection. I have worked my way out of being compulsively type A. Like when I was younger, everything had to be in line. And through my marriage, I have learned that I didn't need to be that intense. James is totally laid back. I mean, when we first met, that guy didn't have a care in the world. And if I had a care, he'd say, well, yeah, but who cares? Like, who cares? I'm like,
chill out, right?
This matters. This is important. He's like, but why does this matter? Who cares? Like it took me time being married to adjust to the fact that James was so easygoing. And it's funny because, life's made him a little more serious, but he is now later in age, he's getting closer to 50 and he's finding his way back to that lighthearted fun. But he's really balanced that for me, where I helped him kind of pay attention to the details, where he's helped me to not pay so much attention to the details.
Right. Well, and I think that's interesting because as an endurance athlete, you would think that you would need to be more intense with that. So how did that work for him?
Yeah, it draws the intense personalities. Sometimes in the sport of triathlon, I was like, man, what's with all these people? I didn't realize that's the crowd it draws. Laid back person.
That makes sense.
Isn't spending time in a sport, especially a multi-sport like that. Your training, it's like a lot of dedication to the 3 sports. It takes real focus and planning to get the training in for each sport. But James has always been a minimalist trainer. He's always believed that breaks are as important as the training. And so he's really good at training as little as possible while still doing the training he needs to do.
That's pretty cool. So that really shows his own balance then. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
I mean,
amazing.
it's funny. It doesn't the sport doesn't suit his personality because you think he'd just be the guy out doing things for fun and trying to get better at them. Like golf is where his heart really is, and golf is an intense sport, but he's laughing and having a great time while he's doing it. And so you wouldn't think that something like triathlon that would require such focus and attention to detail would draw someone in like him. But what it's actually done is I feel like his personality has helped level the sport a little bit and kind of taken that edge out of the intensity of the sport by being who he is in the sport, especially as a figure.
Well, and then it attracts different kinds of people to it as well.
Sure
So
does.
what,
Yeah.
and that's interesting because he's not just done the sport, he's taking that to an extreme. So will you explain to everybody why he's called the Iron Cowboy and some of the things that he has done?
I would say he accidentally fell into this because he was a mortgage broker and we hit the crash of 2008 and he was doing a little coaching, triathlon coaching on the side just because it was fun. And so he wanted an edge, something that would help him stand out as a coach. And he was helping my dad raise money for a charity and he did the Try and Give a Dam project.
Mhm.
So my dad was building dams in Kenya to you have a wet season and dry season, so it's drought or flooding. So these dams were to help preserve some of the water so they could maintain it throughout the year. And James was trying to raise money, so he created the Try and Give a Dam project. And in doing this, he's like, I'm gonna, get a world record for the most half full distance triathlons, a half Ironman, 70.3 is the overall mileage. And he thought, if I do that, that'll give me an edge as a coach, but it's also a fun way to raise money. My dad is a really dynamic person, and he's not big on these dinners where you sit there and you auction paintings. So it was a fun way for them together to raise money for the charity that was kind of dynamic and fun. Well, that in turn led to another world record when James saw, he always jokes and says, who wants to be the world record for the half? There's no
Right.
honor.
Right.
Gotta be
Woo!
Yeah, it's got to be the full. And so he looked it up, and at the time the world record was only 20, and he's like, I can do that. I'm going to smash that. I'm going to do 30.
Yeah.
So it kind of evolved from raising money for a charity and trying to create some type of clout as a coach into these opportunities. And then he accidentally fell into being a keynote speaker, which was never part of his intention. I mean, he wanted to be a professional golfer. He accidentally ends up in triathlon and then accidentally ends up being a professional triathlete who's sponsored and paid to do these triathlons, who accidentally falls into being a keynote speaker.
That's so crazy. Okay, so talk about his 50-50-50. And I would love to hear your role in that because there is it on Netflix? There's a documentary about
Amazon
it.
Prime now. It was on
Amazon Prime.
Netflix first. Now it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can go on and see that and you play a pretty vital role in making that happen. So can you explain what you did and what he did too?
Sure. So in 2012, when he was doing the full distance triathlon, it ended up being 30 in 1 year. We had two events left, and we had left Lake Havasu, Arizona. Um, he had just pulled a boy, cerebral palsy, a boy with cerebral palsy through at Dayton, and it was just a heinous day. I mean, they had changed the race course because of construction. It ended up being all hills, and then there was a cart malfunction. And we actually have that all documented on video. And, the bike ride was supposed to take him 5 hours, ended up taking like 10 and a half. And I had to go out the second half and hold my aero bar with one hand and push the cart with the other. And it was a really special day for us, for him and I to work together to make that happen, but just heinous. And we're leaving, and he's like, I have this idea. We're driving to Phoenix from Lake Havasu, Arizona to Phoenix. And he's like, I think I should do 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days. And I was like, to
He
date,
was crazy.
2012 to date was the worst year of my life.
Yeah.
It was brutal. And I said, you can't talk to me about this. Like, we got to finish this first. So we still had to
Yeah.
do that one in Phoenix, then we had to do one in Palm Springs, California to finish up that world record in 2012. So I told him he couldn't talk to me till February. The last race was the beginning of December. So he kept trying and I kept putting him off. And finally February came and he's like, it's February. So he had initially wanted to do that in 2014, which would have only given him 1 year. And I said, there's no way. So this is the personality. James has these great ideas. He is the dreamer. And he's like, I have this amazing idea. And I'm like, whoa, bro, like that is not plausible. Like we have to actually think this through. So I told him if he waited and did it in 15 to make it a 2 year gap, that I could get behind it. And the idea was we would need a year to get sponsorship and things like that, as well as the training. He'd have to heal from this crazy year, which of course now seems like nothing to him.
Right.
But I we needed to be realistic about the setting. And so we flew to Hawaii on June, probably like May 30th. He started on June 8th or June 9th. And we did 50 Ironmans through 50 states in 50 days. Hawaii, we had to start at midnight because of the time change, and we had to catch a red eye to Alaska, red eye to Washington, where there was an RV waiting for us. And then we drove through the rest of the country. And the idea was we drove through night and he raced during the day. He had done the other world records on his own. They were quite lonely, quite dramatic. It's interesting because he gets a lot of attention for the 50, the 100, but 2012 was a wild year for us personally and professionally. And so he didn't want to do it again alone. So we planned it through the summer so we could take the family and we could do it together. We packed all our belongings up, put them in storage, and we took off and disappeared for 50 days, a little longer then. So I just finished school. I graduated from college 10 days before we started, crammed 5 semesters into 4. And I mean, it was a crazy 2 years leading up to that launch, and then another crazy 50 days, and then another crazy year after. So that one, we raised money for childhood obesity to educate kids and families when kids were young to help them, learn how to grow food. And we donated that money to the Jamie Oliver Foundation.
I remember that as part of the documentary. So was 2012 difficult because he was doing those Ironmans by himself?
Yeah, and we didn't have any money, so we had just lost everything, and we were bootstrapping it. So we had
Hmm.
people that were donating air miles, and we were trading. Like I was babysitting, and I was weeding and cleaning houses in exchange for uh, race entry fees, which were $1,000 a piece, close to $1,000 a piece, and things like that. And I mean, we'd lost everything with the recession, and so we were living in a 2 bedroom house with no heat. And I was in school and I was working, and we had 5 tiny kids, and James was traveling. He was gone for close to, I think it was 5 weeks, 6 weeks in July, and our car was repossessed during that time. And I mean, just immense struggle,
Everything. Yeah.
immense struggles. In fact, my favorite story is he flew to Europe and we couldn't afford to fly him back and forth. So he just lived essentially in his rental car in between races, and he didn't have any money. So his food was race nutrition. He was living off like Gatorade and stuff. So he managed to make connections at some of these events, and then they would host him. They'd pack him a lunch. They'd found a friend that lived in the next country, a cousin or something, from France to Italy or whatever. And so then he would stay with that family, and then they would pack a lunch for him. But it was just, I mean, totally bootstrapping him. When he got to the airport, he flew from Europe to New York to do that last stretch of those races, and he didn't have enough money to ship his bike. And so he set all the money he had on the counter, and he said, "This is all I have. I hope my bike makes it to New York." And he walked off. So it was like pure
Oh,
faith. But
wow.
I think he had like I think he remembers, but he had like $80 and he needed 200 or something, or he had 120 and he needed 200 or something. And he just set that money on the counter, back in the days when we used cash,
Right.
and he walked off. And it was just pure faith. He's like, I stood there in New York, nervous as could be, hoping that my bike made it on that plane. So he was going through that while I was going through everything at home. And so we just kind of fought side by side and high-fived every now and then, and just fought for that year. So for him to propose the next idea before that year was over was asinine in my mind. Asinine.
You're like, no, don't like talk to the hand, right?
Yeah. Like the eternal dreamer, right? And like the eternal entrepreneur. It's like he didn't even know that's what he had in him, and he did it.
The best corporations have both of those personalities. I don't
Yeah,
know if you've I think it's called Rocket Fuel or something like that. I can't remember. But it's this book about how corporations are run, and they take Disney as the best example because you've got Walt Disney, who was the dreamer, and then you've got his brother who actually ran the company. But one without the other would not have made Disney. And
absolutely.
so I see that in your marriage that you've got this ability to dream and drive,
And implement, dream and
and
implement.
implement. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what has been the biggest struggle for you in this? I mean, obviously you're dealing with a big dreamer, and so you're trying to figure out, do you do this logistically while also raising your kids
Yeah.
and finding the funding for all of that? So what has been the most difficult part for you?
Um, I like to say if I could done it my way, it would have been a lot less painful, you know, because James is totally like fly by the seat of his pants. And I think that's complicated a lot of things along the way. But at the same time, it's that eternal faith that is what drives him, that he's like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I'll put that money on that counter and I'll just expect my bike to show up. Where I'm like, well, why didn't we just set the money aside in the first place?
Right.
So, for me, I think the biggest struggle was being able to support dreams that I thought were crazy, for one, that I didn't understand. But also it was a lonely journey for both of us because we had to fight different battles. And even though we were together on the 50, we were in completely different worlds. And I mean, a lot of people have hard lives and they have to deal with things forever. And that's something I didn't have to do. I knew there was a timeline, but the catch was that it never ended. So the hope was like, oh, I can do it for this long because it's only going to last this long. But that was never true. It's just kept going and going and going. So adapting to that and being willing to surrender that control and say, I'm just going to trust this and I'm going to go with it. And, God tells me this is the right direction. This is the right direction. I'm like, but this isn't the direction I want to go. Can we go a different direction? And God's like, yeah, no, the plan is for you to suffer. And I'm like, okay. Um,
That is never a plan that you want to accept,
no,
right?
I know. I mean, really, there was never a moment of reprieve, ever. There was never a moment to come up for air. And so it was a really valuable lesson for me to learn how to control my emotions, which I've always been pretty good at. But it was never comfortable. It was never easy. I never had any help. I had to do everything alone. We never had support, like my parents supported us and that was pretty much it.
Hmm.
I mean, even our friends admit that they didn't think he could do it. A lot of them pretended to support, but you can see through that. There were people who were willing to make sacrifices, but there weren't that many of them. There were some that were willing to make it look like they were helping, but they weren't willing to sacrifice. And over the years, that's what's been interesting is those friends have been weeded out. We know who was loyal, we know who stood by us. And so, I mean, I just think it was all hard. It was all miserable and it was all work. It was fight or flight for 8 years. It
Well, did
wasn't,
you ever wonder why are we doing this? What's the point of it?
I wouldn't say it like that. I would say more like, how is this going to end? Like,
Hmm.
we knew we were supposed to do it. Like God had told us this is what you're supposed to do, but we didn't know why. And it didn't, I mean, we were willing to risk everything because if it didn't work out, we could rebound and do something different. But it was kind of always like, man, I really hope this is going to be worth it because we don't really know what the outcome is. And ultimately the outcome was totally different than we expected it to be. I mean, nowhere near what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you guys would be public speakers
No
starting out?
way.
That's a hard left turn, right?
James is a total introvert. So, over the years, he's become more extroverted. And he was pretty antisocial, and now he's quite social. And, his perspective of people has changed. It was interesting. He and I have seen different sides. I saw the uglier side of humanity, and he saw the better side of humanity. And so we've almost flip-flopped. Like, I now have more reservations about people where he loves and trusts people more, and my friend circle's shrunk and his has grown.
Hmm.
It's been really interesting to see how those roles have switched. And there's lessons in both for both of us in this experience and in these experiences. But I mean, totally different. Totally different. We both come out the other end almost opposite. And we both have lessons to learn from that, opposition in all the experiences that we have.
I think not knowing the why is one of the hardest things. My husband and I moved out to Missouri for Oh, we lived there for 12 years and we felt the same way. Like God said, this is where you need to go, figure it out. And then we went through some truly hellish years. And so we're thinking, why were we supposed to come here? Because it was so hard. And we came out on the other end really appreciating that journey and finding the value in it. But man, when you don't know the why of something, it's really hard to keep going. And it's
Yeah.
hard to know, well, how long is this? You just know like this is just your next step. Go.
Well, and I'm really good at, I mean, I would say today I feel like James is more optimistic than I am. Like if you were to say in this moment, because our experiences were different, right?
Right.
But I'm really good at seeing the bright side. I'm really good at maintaining hope and controlling emotions and problem solving and executing. But it was, I mean, I think I surpassed my capacity with these experiences. Like I definitely, that was my strength. And I was even tested in my strength. So a
Yeah.
lot of people were tested in our weakness, right? But I feel like I was even tested in my strength. So, the 50 was, we saw beautiful, beautiful things from people who didn't know us and very ugly things from people who did know us. And so that was an interesting experience too, because I mean, these complete strangers bent over backwards for us, bent over backwards. Things that I couldn't imagine that I would do for somebody because they were that generous. But then the people who are closest to us were the ones who were continuing to betray us. So it was really interesting to see both sides of that coin and to choose what you focus on. You had to choose where you were going to put your focus. And, it was minute to minute. You were choosing this 1 minute right now. You weren't choosing for the day. You weren't choosing for the hour. You were choosing for this 1 minute. How am I going to see this 1 minute today? Because I could focus on anything I wanted. And I could have said, this isn't right. This isn't fair. I don't want to do this anymore. Or I could have said, these strangers are looking after us and God is directing us and guiding us and we can do this.
So is that what you told yourself all the time?
Oh my gosh, every minute of every day. I ended up having to drive through the night, which was never part of the original plan. By the way, if you know James Lawrence, you know this. If you don't, you don't. Nothing ever goes according to how he promises the plan will go, right? He's a dreamer. So he has these big dreams. He's like, no, I dreamed it's going to go this way. Never does. So I ended up driving, and I know shows the party pooperness in me, but I'd never stayed up all night in my life. Never. I've always been a morning person, so I don't do late nights. And I ended up having to stay up all night and drive a lot of these nights and stay up all day with my family and sometimes drive again the next night, going multiple days with maybe an hour of sleep. And that was like the true test because I could have said, no, I'm not driving, or this is too hard, or I've never done this before. Or what if I
Mhm.
crash this car? And, but it was like I knew we were there. I knew God was going to direct us. I knew there was a purpose to all this. And so I had to trust that. You have to trust that because we don't know. We have no idea. And I can't imagine if we had chickened out of the initial idea or if we had not completed them, how different our life would be. Like, what on earth
Yeah.
were we doing? And the lives James has touched, the emails and the messages he gets from him sharing his story or people being a part of these journeys, like it's changed people's lives. And I'm like, what if we had chickened out? All those
Yeah.
people's lives would be different. So, truly a blessing to be able to connect with people all over the world at that level and impact them in a positive way.
And you think about it, and I mean, like I think about my life and I go, oh, what if I had never gone to Missouri? What if I had never, done anything that I have done? What are the things that I'm scared to do now that maybe 10 years down the road, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that was like the best thing that I could have
What
ever
if I'd
done.
never done it, right?
Right, exactly. How would the world be a different place? And I think every single person on this earth has those moments where they were meant to be at that moment, at that time, talking to those people. And so I
Notice
think that's cool.
you said moments because it doesn't
Moments.
happen once. It happens
Yes, you're right.
over and over and over, and we have a choice. We have a
Yeah,
choice to act. We have a choice to chicken out. We have a choice to humiliate ourselves in front of everybody and go, well, that didn't work. I'll try something else. It's
right.
all a choice.
To be willing to fail.
Yeah. And I think the misconception, this is something that is a soapbox thing for me. It really bugs me. Is these struggles have been very public, but other
Hmm.
struggles in my life haven't. And people love to say, well, you don't understand because I don't advertise my problems. Because I handle my adversity with grace, it's discredited.
Right.
So, someone's like, well, you wouldn't understand, or you don't know what that's like. And I'm like, why? Because I'm not blabbering about it on social media. I'm not telling the world like stuff that's not appropriate to be telling the world. But these projects made it very public. So
Hmm.
people couldn't say that anymore. But I still live in a space where I am criticized because my life is so easy because I handle that adversity with grace. And it's unfortunate because instead of being empowered, people are critical and you're like, you're mad because I have a good attitude but it doesn't make it any easier for me. Just because
Right.
James can handle some of these struggles with grace doesn't mean it's any easier for me than it is for anybody else. But people like to discredit the struggles because we have a good attitude, right? So that's a soapbox for me. I hate when
Well,
people.
I mean, and you really get down to envy is what it is, right? And that's really what that is a reflection of. And if you are envious of something, you have to look at the entire picture, not just that one sliver
Right.
that you think is so amazing, right? Like you've got to be willing to go, okay, well, if this is what I think it is, what is it really? You know what I mean? And really be able to be willing to go, okay, would I be willing to accept that sacrifice?
Yeah. Well, and it's unfortunate that we don't say what is behind this picture, what is behind this
Yeah.
person. And I have a niece the other day. It's like I didn't know you were poor. I'm like, oh, I wasn't just poor, sweetheart. Like a family of seven living off $1,000 a month that I was earning babysitting, and James like was earning half at coaching. I was doing half at babysitting and doing energy work for people. And I mean, I had five little kids at home, no money, no nothing. And I'm like, that's one of James's biggest pet peeves is he's like, they see the headlines, they see the today, like, oh, you've got this big house and these cute dogs, and you go on these trips and all these things, and it's like, you have no idea what the sacrifice. You should know, but you don't. So for her to say
No.
that to me, it was like, you didn't know we were poor, like you don't even know poor. Like
Right.
I couldn't afford baby wipes, and I was washing my kids' bums in the sink when I changed a diaper because I could not afford baby wipes. So, and I could get some things from my church, but they didn't have everything. So it was interesting for her to say that I was like, you need to do some research and learn about people that you think and try to understand them better because it's the headline, the whole story that comes up to it. You have no idea the sacrifice that gets people to where they are.
So what does sacrifice mean to you now?
It's interesting because my sacrifices have changed. I had a lot of little kids. I had 5 kids in 6 years, and James, of course, was gone. So I felt like a single mom a lot of that time. And I was earning, part of the income and things like that. So to me, sacrifice now is I don't really feel like anything sacrificed for me because everything I decide to do, I want to do. So if I decide to, for instance, I love to get everything done in the morning because I'm a morning person. I kind of get tired later in the day. So if my daughter has a doctor's appointment, like she did a couple of days ago, go get a blood draw in the middle of my morning, I don't see myself as sacrificing that my time for her because ultimately I value her more than I value that routine, or the different ways you give your time. If you don't want to do it, you shouldn't be doing it because your attitude sucks, right? So I don't know. I don't really feel like I have to sacrifice anymore. I feel like my perspective has changed, that it's like it's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. And either you choose to do it or you don't. But I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be a sacrifice. Where
So it's a
back in the day,
mindset. That's really what it is. It's just sacrifice. I think sometimes we get that negative connotation,
yeah,
right?
it's like, well, I'm giving up something I want for something you want. And it's like,
Right.
but do you want what they want for them because you love them? Yeah,
Right.
you know? So I think that definition's changed for me. I mean, sacrifice now is like, I'm going to eat something healthy instead of this brownie I want to eat.
Right.
It's like I really want that brownie.
Right.
Really that. But I'm like, ugh, fine, I'll skip it.
So how old are your kids now? Because I think that's an interesting childhood to be brought up, going all over the place and watching your dad race. Yeah, how obviously you guys included them in what you were doing. So what, from their perspective, what was their childhood like?
So our oldest is 21. Then that's Lucy. Then Lily's 20. Daisy will be 18 in April. Dolly's 16 and Quinn is 14. They think it's hilarious that people think James is so cool.
They're
They're,
they're true teenagers, right?
yeah. They're like, wait, why do people think you're cool again? So
Right.
for them, it's been beautiful because they've been engaged as much as they want to be engaged. So even with the Conquer 100, which came later, that was in 2021. James did 100 triathlons right here where we're at, 100 days in a row. They were as involved as they wanted to be. So it's been fun. People always ask us, like, do your kids do triathlon? And I'm like, no, they don't want to. Like
That's
we don't,
okay.
yeah, we don't try to make them do things we do. It's what they want to do. And so they were as involved as they wanted to be, but they find it absolutely hysterical that people think James is a celebrity because no matter where we travel in the world, James always gets stopped. No matter what airport we're in, if we're on James and I went on this cruise that he was speaking on, and there were all these, people from South America that were like, oh my gosh, are you the Iron Cowboy? Like freaking out. And my kids are like, oh my
Oh,
God.
again.
Yeah. So they appreciate it because they see the perks. He travels for work, and so we get to go on some pretty cool vacations with air miles. We just saved all of our air miles for the last year and a half to do this cruise for spring break. And then they get to travel. We take them on trips when he speaks and things like that. And they definitely see the perks with that. And they remember the hard times. And so they were raised as minimalists, I would say. They were raised to appreciate the good stuff, and to really understand reward comes with work. And so they're really awesome kids. And it's fun to see them get older and to accidentally show you what you've taught them, like, oh no, we're going to do it this way because we want to make sure this. And I'm like, yes, that's like a direct
Don't
quote,
you love that? I love it when it's accidental. They think they're being so independent, and they are, but it's like,
Are,
I
yeah.
did a good job.
So I'm really grateful that those hard times they remember because it has shaped who they are. But I was careful to shelter them. I didn't complain. I didn't whine. I wanted them to not have any idea. So it was just finding a way to always be positive and enjoy the hard times, even though they were hard. It was finding ways to spend time with them without spending money. We slept on the tramp every Saturday night for like 2 years, except for in the winter. I mean, except for like 3 months of the year. We slept on the tramp every Saturday night.
I bet
So
they loved it.
yeah, things like that we were able to create these amazing memories that don't include all the money and all the luxury and things like that. So it's been fun to see them, especially the Conquer 100 where they're a little older, to be able to participate and to have their own memories and have their own experiences, but really have the lessons from the hard times that we had as well as the successes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I I love that they don't feel compelled to be like you.
Yeah, they definitely don't.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of our daughters ran a marathon last year, and then my daughter Daisy's running another one this year. Lily wants to, but she's graduating from college in April, so she's like, I got to get through college, working full time, going to school full time. She's like, I
She's
need a
got
minute.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but so there is some the fitness is rubbed off. They all enjoy fitness, but I mean, they've adopted my perspective with sports is all about the fun. I'm not a big into competition. It's always been for fun. So they love being active. They love playing sports, not like being an athlete, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So what does being athletic mean to you and physically active?
That's changed over the years too, because I'm in this really weird stage of life that I'm kind of confused. I'm 42. I'm turning 43 in April. And I'm not sure if what I'm experiencing is normal because I'm getting older or if like there's something wrong with me because you can't do the things you used to do. But I see people do all the time do really cool things as they get older. So I'm in this weird stage of trying to decide what I want the rest of my life to look like. But James and I both, I mean, he's going to do a bunch of races this year. He always lies and says, like, oh, I'm going to take a step back. He never does.
You're like, you don't have that in you.
He doesn't have it in him. I keep hoping he does, but he doesn't. But for both of us, we're thinking more about like longevity now, where a lot of times when you're an endurance athlete, you age faster because you really tax the body. And so, he had his true age done, and he's about a year younger than he actually is, which is amazing because usually they're way older, especially with his history.
Hmm.
Me, I'm like, I don't want to beat myself up anymore. Like, I just don't because I'm getting older and I don't want to be crippled. And you see a lot of these athletes as they're older, they're crippled. Like I've seen these bodybuilders and stuff. I've always loved bodybuilding and they're like crippled. And so I'm like, I don't want to do anything that's going to prevent me from living my life. So now my focus, athlete used to be like all in all the time, where fitness and, being active now is more of a lifestyle, but also focused on longevity. So it's like I started doing a bar class that I absolutely love. I mean, I was a gymnast, right? It was all like push-ups and rough and tough. And this is like soft and stretching and these weird wimpy movements that make your legs shake. And you're like, I guess these aren't as wimpy as I thought, it's not throwing on the barbell that's as heavy as you can, like you've done your whole life. But I'm trying to shift more into that. And James has done that too, more like in calisthenics and things like that, that we're like, we want to live life to the fullest through our whole life. And we've seen a lot of people that hasn't worked out for. So that's kind of where we're at now. But I have like some dissonance with it because my mind wants me to do all the things I've always done. So I think I'm not doing enough. And then I add up what I've done in that day. And I'm like, normal people probably think that's pretty good. I'm at this weird stage of life that I'm trying to sort that out.
I think that's pretty normal because I've gone through that myself and I decided that I want to be an active senior citizen because I've seen the opposite in my life. People are so sedentary that they age faster too. So I think there's this happy medium right in there where you don't go too strong where you're beating yourself up, but you've got to go strong enough that you have mobility, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm training for this triathlon sprint. So it's the first time I've ever done this. I've always wanted to try it. And so just FYI, a sprint is like the baby of the baby triathlon. So it's
Listen, don't say it like that. The sprint's the fastest one. It's the one you want to go the fastest in. That's the way you say it.
oh, okay, that's fair. But I just want to finish it. Like I'm not
Yeah,
even
it'll
going
be
for fast. I'm
it'll
just
be your
finishing.
it'll be your fastest.
That's true. That's true. That's a great way to put it. Well, and it's interesting because I'm seeing so many positive benefits from because I'm on this schedule of, swimming and biking and running and doing all those things just a little bit every day, one or two of them. And man, like I'm sleeping so much better. And like I used to get leg cramps all the time and I still get them a little bit, but not as intensely. And it's just, I'm like, okay, this is really amazing. Like
Works.
things that I didn't expect to happen are happening. And I'm like, okay, that is really amazing. So I think there's a really good in between there to be able to
Well, you think
have an
about it, you
active
have
life your whole life.
cycling and swimming, those are low impact sports, right? So they're like amazing to do as you
Yeah.
get older.
Yeah.
Amazing to do. So
Well,
like
and something that I'm learning too is I used to be really big into stretching and I kind of said, well, I'm doing all this other stuff. So I can put off the stretching because, right?
oops.
Yeah, oops.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that stretching is actually even more important now that I'm moving my body a little bit more. So,
Well, and that's the whole thing is that's where people get in trouble. One, with strength, they fall and they can't get up. But two,
mhm.
like you said, mobility and agility. I'm
Yes.
like, I want to be able to go up and like my dad, he's 76 and like the stuff he does, I'm like, I hope I can do that at 76. Like, and I would say he's relatively agile. He's had his back fused and his neck fused, like he's had like that's taken away some of that agility, but he's out there living life, man. And I'm like, if I can do that, but I want to, I want to get up and out of a chair easily. I want to be able to get in and out of a
Yeah.
car. It's things like Peter Attia talks a lot about living. Like we have to be doing fitness to live, not doing fitness to like be strong. So
Exactly. Exactly. I look at I've known so many senior citizens who end up just watching TV.
Yeah. That was my grandpa watching Westerns every day, you know?
Right. And I'm just like, okay, that's like the definition of hell for me. Like just to be that sedentary. I'm like, but here's the thing, if you don't, and this is what I realized, if I don't start moving now, that's where I will end up. Like it starts now in my 40s to put that together.
So my bar class, I was telling them, I said, yeah, at my age, I'm 42, and I say, what do I need to do now, today? And they're laughing because they're 65. Because I say, what do I need to do now? So when I'm 60, they're like, 60, 60 is young. We're saying, what do we need to do now? So at 80,
Right.
you know, but really, I mean, I love prevention. I live my life by prevention, whether it's organization in the house or taking care of my dogs or kids or my body or groceries. Let's make sure we have this stocks when we need it, we have it kind of a thing. And that's where I am with my health too. I'm like, I want to make sure that when I call on my body to perform at whatever age, I've prepared it to step up,
Yeah.
which happens now, happens right now.
Exactly. Happens right now. Not just in moving, but in eating, which is,
Yeah.
I think that's harder for me is having
Remember
the
the
healthy
brownie
diet.
I mentioned earlier? I just started eating clean again this week, and I'm just like, I'm making up for Christmas. I earned it. I'm like, all this, I got to make up for the last 2 months of Christmas, my daughter getting married. I'm like, oh man, starting over. But to the brain, I read books and I don't criticize anybody who does anything differently, but to me, it's important to read a tangible book because I'm like, I got to keep this brain sharp. And I already struggle with my memory, and people say they all do, but like, I got problems with my memory. Like people thought I had early onset. I don't. I checked.
Hmm.
But I want to keep that brain sharp too because I'm like, it's what good is your body if your brain doesn't work? You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. So, what's a golden nugget that you can share with our audience? Something that you've learned along the way that is maybe like one of your mantras.
Um, I have lived a life doing things I hate doing for my own good. So it's like if there's something you hate doing, do it on purpose. Like I make myself do pull-ups because I hate them. I can do push-ups all day long. I hate pull-ups. I make myself do them at least twice a week simply because I hate them. Or it's like I make myself get out of the house if I don't want to. Or I make it's literally, and James calls it being intentionally uncomfortable. When was the last, he always says, when was the last time you were intentionally uncomfortable? But I make myself do a lot of things I don't want to do. And in fact, my daughter today, she's doing an online class that's science, and she was supposed to have it done in December, but they've extended it to May so she can get her associate's or 2-year degree with her high school diploma. And I was like, "You're working on science today, right?" She's like, "I don't want to." I'm like, "We're all doing things we don't want to do." And then she said, "Will you grab me a paper towel?" I said, "I don't want to." Because I'm like, it's really living in a world where we all have to do things we don't want to do. So instead of making it happen by default, do it yourself. Like go out there and practice doing things you hate doing. And the bottom line is like then it's done. My mom always,
Yeah.
whenever she's doing anything fun, she's always like, "Oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that." And I'm like, you don't even enjoy your time off. Or if you do all the things you hate doing first and you get them done, everything else is bliss. Everything else you enjoy because all the things you didn't want to do, you did first. So I'd say
So
golden
what
nugget. Do
it
what
is,
you don't
what
want
has
to do.
that done for your own mindset?
One, it's pure torture. Like every day, I'm like, why is this my life lesson? But I think it's everybody's life lesson.
Right.
But I think a big part of it is showing you one, you're not going to die if you do things you don't want to do, right? Like you're scared to jump off that cliff when you're swimming in Hawaii or wherever you're at, just jump. Like nothing's going to happen. But two, so I listened to this podcast and I think it's called the AMCC, not the AMMC. I think it's AMCC. It's a part of your brain that is only developed when you do things you don't want to do. So if there's something like, I don't mind doing laundry. I don't care. Laundry's like the easiest thing in the world. Some people hate it. To me, I'm like, I don't get the big deal is you throw it in, you go do something else, you come back, you switch it, you put it away, whatever, right? That doesn't build that AMCC. But when I think it's called MCC. If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. But if you're doing something you don't want to do, if you're doing those pull-ups, it's like that part of your brain is being strengthened. It's the only way to strengthen it, is doing things you don't want to do. So I'm like, there's a lot of benefits to doing these things that we don't even know about yet. But the other thing is, you're not like a big complainer or a big baby and entitled to being comfortable all the time. People don't mind being around you because you're like, oh, that's the crappiest job working at Taco Bell. I have to go clean the toilet. Well, I'll go do it. Everybody else is complaining. Everybody's feeling entitled like they shouldn't be the one to do it. If you're the one that gets in there and does it, it completely changes the paths and the opportunities in your life. So, what's coming that you don't know is coming because you've been willing to do all the things that suck that you don't want to do?
Well, that's what I was just thinking. So many people want the end result, but they don't want to do the work because it's uncomfortable in the middle that gets them that end result.
Right.
Right. And so like I decided to go to Toastmasters. I don't know if you know what that is. So it's like a public speaking
Good for
training
you.
ground, right? And every time they have Toastmasters, they have this table topic. So it's like you have to give an impromptu 2-minute speech. Like you get your topic right there and you got to do it. And it's scary, but I always make myself do it. Always. And I think the worst part is actually getting your topic because then you're like, okay, what am I going to say?
Mhm.
Now, and I've
Yeah.
got to fill that time up for 2 minutes. But I also recognize that if I don't do those things, then I'm not going to be the impromptu speaker that I want to be,
Mhm.
you know?
And that the world needs.
Right.
Everybody has the guy that's prepared and shows up when he feels like it.
Right.
But where's the guy that's willing to show up when they're unprepared and they don't feel like it, but they're willing to step up?
Exactly.
Right? James and I talk a lot about this. It's kind of our new obsession as a married couple to talk about because we're later in life, that there's a lot of things you do in life. And going back to your original topic about why we were doing this, like why, not having the whys. There's a lot of things you do in life that you don't know why you do them, and you do them and it doesn't make sense. And then later an opportunity presents itself that you're like, holy crap, had I not spoken Spanish, I couldn't have done that thing right there. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But we don't know what those are going to be. So we're always encouraging our kids, and I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you can do everything. If you want to be 10 different things, you can be all of them. Just first pick one that's going to help you make money, because then that will allow you to have money to do the other ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pick one and finish it. None of this start and stop and change your mind. If you're putting your feet in, you're putting them in and you're finishing, even if you decide to go a different direction later, you're completing them one by one. But then when they're 40 and when they're 50, when opportunities present themselves, they've had all of this experience. So we're at this stage of our life now that we have a lot of opportunities presented to us that we're ready to receive and we're ready to seize because of our life experiences. But we know a lot of people that are surrounded with us that aren't ready. And if those same opportunities were presented to these people, or they have been presented, or James and I have tried to share these opportunities with people, they weren't prepared, they couldn't seize it. They could not seize that opportunity. So there's a lot of things in life you're going to do and you don't know why. And they may seem like they're for nothing. I mean, we go to college and we don't even end up using our college degree for what we end up doing in our life, right? But you never
Yep.
know when all of those things adding up, or you're going to meet people, or you're going to make connections, or you're going to be in the right place at the right time because of these weird things you did that are going to open the door somewhere down the road. But those doors don't open for you unless you have done all these random things, or they open
Yep.
and you can't reach them. You can't get there. You can't step through them.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of our new obsession because we're having these opportunities present themselves that had we not done the things we've done, we could not seize these moments.
I have an example because I have found that to be 100% true in my life. I have a degree in wildlife, and when I chose my degree, everybody around me was like, "You're freaking crazy! Like, what are you going to do with that degree?" I'm like, "Well, I
You're
would."
going to be poor for the rest of your life. That's the
Right.
line.
Exactly. I'm going to be a ranger, right? Like I really did. I wanted to do like environmental education. Never got a full-time job. And I did a few internships, right? Never got a full-time job. Fast forward, I am volunteering for my kids' school and I'm putting on the best Earth Week presentations like for like 8 years, right? This is what I did, right?
It's a passion. It's all passion.
Passion, right? I loved it. I loved it, loved it. it was because I did that that I was approached by the executive director to put together an after school program and a summer camp program
Oh
for
my
the
gosh, I
community center.
chilled. This is what I'm talking about.
Exactly. But had I not done that, I would not have had this opportunity, which and that was so much fun to be able to develop those programs. And then I became the director of the community center, and so I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And so you're 100% right. You're going to be things that you're going to go, I don't know why I'm doing this, but it's the right thing. But it won't be until years later that you find out.
Sometimes they're weird things. You're like, why do I have this feeling that I should buy this mailbox instead of this mailbox?
Right?
And come to find out, you meet somebody and end up marrying your daughter or getting your kid a job, or you never know. And I think a great way to teach that is like with my kids. I'm like, if somebody says to you, "Hey, impromptu, I want to go to Vegas and go to this concert. Do you want to come?" If you do not have money saved, you are not going.
Yeah.
But if you have money saved, you say, "I'll be there."
Yeah.
That is a rewarding one for kids to think about, right? A rewarding experience that makes them want to be prepared for an opportunity to present itself. And that's just leisure.
But that's
What
again doing what's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to save
exactly?
and not spend in the moment so that you can have that opportunity
Everybody
later.
around you spending. Everybody around you. My daughter does nails and it blows my mind. All these young people get their nails done. And I'm like, these people are spending like $150 a month on nails. I,
Yeah.
I made $800 when I was their age.
Yeah.
That was it. You're paying $400 rent, utilities, whatever. And I didn't have a car because I wanted to save my money. But I'm like, it's amazing. And then Lily's like, yeah. And then sometimes they stiff me or they don't have as, and I'm like, crazy, crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
if they value, that's fine. But if the opportunity presents itself to say, hey, we're going on this cruise. Do you have $1,000? Have you saved $1,000? We're going to do this impromptu cruise. You are not going if you don't have that money saved.
Yeah. Such a great lesson. So James has another documentary coming out. I know
Yeah.
we're just about out of time. So will you tell us a little bit about that? And then if somebody wants to reach you, how can they? So those two things.
So James in 2021 did the 100 Ironmans and full distance triathlons right here in Linden. Obviously went out and whatever here in Utah, but that was a documentary and that is coming out this spring. So we actually have our own personal viewing, I think, in the next month. That
Oh,
it's
fun.
and we submitted to Sundance Film Festival and then we found out they got 17,000 entries and we're like, there's no
Wow.
way they watched any of these. So it'll be coming out, typically what they do is they contract with the streaming service and whatever. And then his book will be out next year. So pre-sales for that book will start later this year, probably in the summer. So yeah, I mean, we are very conscious to make all of our outlets different. So if you read our first book, Redefine Impossible on Amazon, it is not the same as the documentary that's on Amazon Prime, which is not the same as the presentation he does for his keynote. So this next book will not be the same, and the documentary, they're all different. So you're not reading the same thing or experiencing the same thing over and over again. So James is very active on social media, Iron Cowboy James, and I am sort of active. Sunny Joe Lawrence on social media. Here's the thing. I have this thing with social media that I don't really understand why everybody cares about everybody else's business. So I go through these stints where I'm like, no, I'm really good about posting. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm not posting. None of this stuff is anybody's business. So I
I'm
really
totally
struggle.
like that. I'm so hot and cold with it. I've been really trying lately to be a little bit better, but I decided I don't have to post about me to make a post.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, but I feel like also too, it's so cliche that it makes me like resistant that it's like everybody's trying to be an influencer out there.
Yeah.
And you have, like these 20-year-olds, they're like, let me teach you about motivation. And you're like, you're responsible for yourself and you only work 3 months out of the year. I'm like, so not to be critical, but it makes me go, I don't want to be one of those guys, like offering advice like I'm some expert. So then I get
Yeah.
all weird about it, but I do check my messages. And when I cold plunge, I do get on Instagram when I got cold plunge and go through it for like 10 minutes or whatever I do, however long I'm sitting in there. So if you message me, I will
You'll
respond.
get it. And yes, you do. So, well, that's wonderful. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? This has been just amazing.
I think my My personal golden nugget over the years has been time passes with or without you. So you don't want to be that guy 10 years down the road saying, I wish I would have. You could have been a
Hmm.
doctor. You have a friend that just went to medical school at 45, just got out of, all this stuff, and he's in his 50s now. It is never too late. Freaking go do what you want to do and don't listen to what anybody else says. Follow your heart, make it happen, look back on life with no regrets.
That's a good place to end. Thank you, Sunny. This has been absolutely amazing. And you're right, your name does fit you.
Thank you, Brenda. I get that pretty regularly. I figured it was just the blonde hair.
Nope, it's everything else too. So I love it. So thank you so much for being here with us and sharing a little bit about your life and your lessons that you've learned. And I just think it's been super beneficial. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brenda.
I really love this conversation with Sunny. I think she just epitomizes this concept of choose your hard. And this is something that I've really thought a lot about the last several years of my life, how no matter what, you're going to go through things that are hard, but it just hits different if you're the one making those hard choices and doing the hard things so that later on it can be easier. I saw this graph or this image late recently where it had two people and they're on different routes heading to the same space, right? So they all started at the bottom of the hill and then there's easy spot at the top of the hill. And one person is going up this really steep slope and the other person is sliding down. But what this person who's sliding down doesn't know is that there's this really, really difficult cliff, like much more difficult than the other person was going through. And it's just choosing your heart. You're going to go through difficult times no matter what, but you can control a lot of that. You can control what you're willing to sacrifice. You can control being uncomfortable so that later on you can experience life at a higher level. And really, it is the easier way rather than choosing easy now and then hard later. So I hope you found some benefit from this. If you did, if you would please like and subscribe and share the podcast, that just helps me out so much. And I hope that it actually gives you benefit in sharing that with other people too and helping them to better their lives as well. And until next time, please know that your purpose is in your story. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step.